Hey folks, it's been a little bit of time to do this because we had almost 700 responses to our social media question of what is your favorite deer cartridge? And it was pretty interesting to see the results. We had some outliers, some really large cartridges and some really small cartridges. Most of them fell in this bell curve of what you would have expected for deer. Now, a lot of this is going to be my opinion, okay? And what I use. And what you use, I'm not saying that's wrong and I'm right. What I'm saying is, here's how I kind of evolved over time in my selection. And when we're all done, we're going to show you what the results are. And I hope that you've guessed it. I suspect some of you will be like, it's probably this, it's probably that. But for my own evolution, if you want to call it that, as a deer hunter, growing up in northern Minnesota, everybody hunted with open sights. And this rifle here was my grandfather's rifle. It's an old Remington Model 14 slide action. Yeah, slide action, right? Out west, everything is just about always a bolt action. You get to the other parts of the country, like the Midwest, the Northeast, you see some slide actions, you see some semi-autos, see lever actions. Well, my dad shot his first deer with this. It was his dad's rifle, so it was sentimental to him. I shot my first deer with it. And it's chambered in a 30 Remington. Of all the results, I didn't see anybody who said 30 Remington. So this is what I shot my first whitetail with in northern Minnesota. And then my dad had one of these. A lot of you probably see this. It's right. Instantly people are like, that's a 30-30. Well, this one is a Marlin 336 carbine, one of the older ones. A lot of people had a Winchester Model 94, but they had them chambered in a 30-30. And I'm looking to see 1% of you, 7 of you, said a 30-30. So at least this shows up still. But again, open sights. My dad actually had a 4-power scope with see-through mounts on his. But these were the thing back in the day, at least in northern Minnesota and a lot of other places. So when I bought my first rifle, I bought a 30-06. That was like, whoo, man, you got a 30-06. You are really uptown with that. And it had, just a small scope on it. And now I look at this 308 I hunt deer with, or my 7mm 08, which is set up identical to this one. Got a suppressor, got this Leupold VX5 with CDS dials, 3-15. I mean, if I would have had this when I was growing up back in the 70s, they'd have thought I just came from some foreign planet or something. But for my own evolution, I told you I started with a 30 Remington and then I went to a 30-06. And then when I moved out west, like a lot of you, I had to buy an all-around one-purpose rifle. And some of you would say, well, why would you get rid of a 30-06? That's an all-around one-purpose rifle, deer, elk, bear, whatever. Well, I fell in love with the trendy thing in northern Minnesota. I had an old Remington Model 742. Which those of you who had them or still have them, now they're called a 7400. It was a semi-auto, and the trigger pull on it was probably in the double digits. And it was heavy, so carrying it around in the mountains was not real good. I grew up reading a lot of the articles at the end of Jack O'Connor's career. Jack O'Connor made the 270 into America's cartridge, especially out west, especially in a bolt action rifle. So what did I end up with? I ended up with, you can call it a Jack O'Connor special. I had a 270 bolt action, hand loaded right here. I still found a few of them. This is a Nosler 150 grain partition, and I don't know how I found that, because right now I only have one 270, but I have a lot of other rifles. So I go from my 270, and then I think, well, I got to get a really big rifle, so I get a 300 Win Mag. And I'm looking to see how many have a 300 Win Mag on here. Not very many deer hunters said the 300 Win Mag. I'm surprised how few it was. I thought it would be way more. So I go to that, and then I start thinking, you know, I love a 308. It's always been one of my favorite cartridges. Why not go to a 7mm 08? Well, no, why not? So that's what I shoot mostly today for deer hunting, is my 7mm 08. I have right here, I have a 140 grain Nosler AccuBond that is just smoking hot. Works perfect for deer. Works, well, I'd shoot anything with it. But then you'll see a few other things over here where I also play around with a 6.5 PRC. I've never shot anything with a 6.5 Creedmoor, but I have one. I have a couple of them, and they're fun to shoot. So this is kind of the far end. You know, this is a 300 Win Mag. Very few of you pick that or higher. Somebody said they hunt with the 22 250. That's what this is. This is my coyote rifle. And in some states, it's not even legal to hunt with that. So you kind of go on its way down. And for me, all of my shots, I try to keep under 400 yards. I just, who I am, I enjoy getting closer. And I know some of you are amazing shooters, and you're shooting out past that, and everybody has their own comfort level. Me, getting older, my eyes aren't as good, my reflexes aren't as good. I usually am looking for something under 300 yards. But when we did the elk video about elk cartridges, I knew that would be pretty controversial. And it was. But the deer cartridge one, we're doing this mostly because we want to know and we're interested. And we read every comment. There were some really, really interesting comments among all those. But a couple things that we found is that most of you are somewhere in this middle area. For me, I try to say for deer, I want 1,200 foot-pounds of kinetic energy at the point of impact. Not at the muzzle, but out there wherever point of impact is. And a lot of people get hung up on energy. I look more at what I call momentum, which is mass times velocity. Energy, you get to square velocity and you only get half of the mass. And the reason most physicists would say that momentum is a better, if you want to call it, factor to consider for penetration is because that represents force, not energy. And there's a difference between force and energy. So the amount of force it would take to stop that bullet is really what we're measuring with momentum of mass times velocity. But because so many are hung up on the idea of kinetic energy, I thought, well, let's go and see what cartridges have 1,200 foot-pounds of kinetic energy at 400 yards. So you start with the 300 Win Mag. That has over 2,000, 180 grain, over 2,000 foot-pounds of energy. Hey, you're going to be just fine. Don't worry about it. You're not even close to the edge with that one. And then you take the 30-06. So you can see I'm kind of starting here at the 30 calibers. The 30-06 has just under 1,600 foot-pounds of energy at 400 yards with a 165 grain bullet. Still way beyond what the minimum, my minimum is for deer. And then you go to the 308, same 165 grain bullet, I'm going to be at just under 1,500 foot-pounds. So then you go from the 30 calibers, you go to the 7mm calibers, or cartridges, the 7mm caliber cartridges, let's call it that. Well, 7mm Remington mag is smoking right along. It's got over 1,800 foot-pounds at 400 yards. The 7mm08, I've still got just under 1,400 foot-pounds at 400 yards. And then I start getting over here into the 6.5s. The PRCs is 1,500 foot-pounds, and the Creedmoor is 1,200 foot-pounds. But when I get out here with this 22-250, I'm nosediving. You know, with this 55 grain bullet, I've only got 530 some pounds of foot-pounds of energy. This 270 right here in my hand, it's got over 1,400. And when I look at all of the answers put together, and we have this really cool chart, have them ranked 1 to 10. I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up to tell you what they were. Number 10 was a 257, whether it's a 257 Weatherby, 257 Roberts. No one really said for sure, but they said a 257. Number 2 was number 9 was a 6.5 PRC. Number 8, a 25-06, which is the neck down, I guess, child of the 30-06. And then number 7 was a 280, whether it's 280 Remington or 280 Ackley Improved, they didn't say. Number 6 is probably the newest cartridge on this list. No, the PRC and the Creedmoor are both pretty new. Number 6 was 6.5 Creedmoor. Now we get into the top 5, and you're going to see a lot of traditional cartridges there. Number 5 was the 7mm Remington Mag. An amazing cartridge. It is the universal cartridge that can do pretty much anything. And then number 4 was the 7mm08. So the two 7MMs came in number 4 and number 5. And quite honestly, I was surprised to see the 7mm08 come in at number 4 because it's a newer cartridge. It's newer than the 7mm Remington Mag. And I didn't think that that many people would pick it, but maybe a lot of you are like me. You've found what a great cartridge it is, how well it performs, how easy it is to shoot, short action, can fit it in a smaller rifle. And then we get to the parent cartridge of the 7mm08 is number 3. That would be the 308 Winchester. Now we're really getting to where we're neck and neck between number 3 and number 2. Number 2 was the 30-06. Just barely beat out the 308. And the 30-06 is about kind of like that 7mm Remington Mag. You are going to have a hard time finding a more versatile cartridge than the 30-06. But then there's quite a big jump to number 1. It's this one. It's the Jack O'Connor Special. It is the 270 Win. Yeah, that most of you, almost 1 out of 5 of you, picked the 270. Why? Well, because it's an amazing cartridge. You can load it down to 130 grain, and that might be your antelope deer cartridge, and it is smoking right along. You can load it up like I do right here to 150 grain, and it'll work for anything, including elk. Shot my first 5 elk with this thing, and I can't tell you how many deer, how many pronghorn I shot with 130 grain in my 270. So that is the result. I think it's really cool to see that. A couple sidebar things that we learned along the way. Those of you who answered a 308, a 30-06, and a 270, it was amazing how many of you have said you've shot more than 30 deer with your rifle in that cartridge. So a bunch of you who've been around hunting long enough to have shot 30 deer, you're kind of in this stuff, right? You're like me. You're using one of the traditional cartridges. Those of you who picked a newer cartridge, like a 6.5 PRC, 6.5 Creedmoor, most of you said you'd only shot 1 to 5 deer with that cartridge. So maybe it's just a function of the old school, those of us who are a little more gray around the ears. We're going to hang out with these, the 270, the 30-06, the 308, the 7MMs. I was so surprised how few of you said some of there was a big trend in cartridges in the 90s, the Winchester short mags. They have it in a 270, they have it in a 300 Win short mag, and they have it in a 7mm short mag. Hardly any of you answered that. And that came to me as a little bit of a surprise. I thought the 30-06 was going to win, but the 270 is the winner with a lot of reasons to support why. Point of all this is to give you a feel for what we shoot. You know, I'm either my 308 or my 7mm 08. Some of the crews shoot 6.5. A lot of you shoot a 270, right? There's really not a right or a wrong. It really comes down to having a rifle and a cartridge that performs well. One that you like to shoot so that you can shoot a lot, because unlike an elk, a deer is a smaller vital target. Accuracy is always important. It is paramount, the most important thing, no matter what you're shooting at. So if there's a rifle and a cartridge that you're going to shoot a lot, you're going to be more accurate under all conditions, all circumstances, and that's going to result in a lot of deer in your freezer. So anyhow, thanks for participating in our survey. We had a lot of fun putting this together, talking about it among ourselves. If you have any additional thoughts or you didn't answer on the Instagram survey, feel free to put your comments down below. We'd love to hear if we missed something. Thanks for watching.